Butterflies. Are they our favorite insect group? Everyone knows butterflies. Everyone loves butterflies. Um, they obviously are some of the favorites in the UK, but what are you guys' favorites? That's the question I want to ask. Nina, could you launch the poll? Because I don't know where the poll button has disappeared to. Um, I don't have the option to launch a poll.
Neither do I. I wonder, I wonder if
No.
we saved. Oh, hold on. I have found a button. We have poll number one.
It's the one that's not titled, yes.
Ta-da! Does that
Woo!
show up?
Okay, there we go. There's a few species there. I've realized I've put beetles in as in the band, not the species, which is very embarrassing in my part. But please select which one of these is your favorite insect groups. Now, as you guys are answering the questions, there was a one of these national polls, and apparently bees and butterflies both came out joint in the top of the nation's favorite insects. So we'll wait and see what you guys select to see if that is the case. Absolutely no love for hoverflies, which I am astounded to hear. This is absolutely devastating. We have, oh, here we go. We'll wait till the full minute and then we'll see. Oh, someone's just selected bugs, shield bugs there. Excellent taste, I must say, excellent taste. Well, we have overwhelmingly, we have 63% of you are saying that butterflies are your favorite insect. Bees are a close second. I say close, not that close at all. 21% with bees, and a few people like moths, and a few people like um shield bugs and bugs, and then someone else has selected other, so I'm really interested to hear what that other is. Feel free to put that in the chat because we were drawing a mind blank on all the different insect groups, so it'd be great to hear that. Wonderful stuff. So butterflies are your favorite insect group for this evening, and that is perfect as we're talking about butterflies this evening. So hopefully you guys learn a wee bit more about butterflies and you learn a bit more about the relationship with plants. Wonderful. So, apologies, having issues with changing the slide. There we go. So, what are butterflies? What is a butterfly? So, butterflies and moths are insects, which means they have 6 legs, and they are in the order Lepidoptera, which is Greek for scaly wings, scaly winged. So, all butterflies and moths share this characteristic. Their wings are covered in these little tiny microscopic scales. And if you look under a wee magnifying glass, you can see all of these different individual scales making up the patterns on their wing. Scales are really important because it helps keep their wings warm. It kind of insulates their wings and keeps them warm, which is really important for when they're active. They need warm muscles so they can move and fly around. But also the scales give them their lovely patterns and colors. Some of those patterns and colors are all about camouflage. Some of them are about startling birds and other predators, and some of them are for looking as bright and colorful as possible to ward off things from eating them. I'll talk a wee bit about that later on. Some big stats for you here. Butterflies and moths make up about 10% of all described living species, which is absolutely amazing, astounding range of biodiversity all around the world, which is amazing. We don't have them all here. On the island of Ireland, we have 35 different species of butterfly, and in Northern Ireland, we have 27 different species of butterfly. We were we were saying in the office today, can we name all 27 species? And we got up to about 25. So after this tonight, see if you can name them all yourselves. We'll go through a fair few of them tonight for sure. So, butterflies and moths have had an extremely long-term love affair with plants. So, a recent study on butterfly DNA by the University of Florida concluded that butterflies first evolved in Central and Western North America when a group of moths, so actually moths came before the butterflies, which is interesting, they gave up their night shift to make use of all the nectar-rich flowers that the bees were feeding on during the day. And scientists are estimating that began 100 million years ago, which is extraordinary. All older than the extinction of the dinosaurs, butterflies and moths, which is absolutely incredible. And not only did they have this relationship with plants where they were taking advantage of this nectar-rich food source, but they were also using the full body and leaf of the plant as well in the other stages of their life cycle. You can see here from this picture here that there are lots of little cabbage white butterfly caterpillars eating on this leaf, and you'll often see this in the summertime with lots of caterpillars feeding gregariously on the leaves of the plant themselves. So it's a bit of an odd relationship they have with plants. They're not only damaging them in the caterpillar stage, but they are so vital and so important for pollinating them in their adult life stage. So this is the sort of plant that they would have began to feed on all those millions of years ago. This is a type of vetch. This is called kidney vetch, which is found in lots of calcareous places and coastal cliffs and things like that. And vetches are a really, really great plant for lots of different butterflies and moths, even to this day. So this plant, or something that looked a lot like this plant, would have been the very first plant that butterflies would have fed on way back whenever they evolved. And since then, the relationship has totally changed. The dynamic just keeps developing. We've got this really interesting, it's not quite a butterfly. It looks just as beautiful as a butterfly. This is the cinnabar moth. Cinnabar moths eat ragwort, and ragwort produces lots of toxins to protect them from being eaten by lots of caterpillars and other insects. But cinnabar moths have adapted to this challenge, and what they do is they consume the ragwort. They themselves aren't damaged by the toxins, but they then take the toxins in and they act as a defense against against other things eating them. So you can see the caterpillar here on the left-hand side is bright yellow orange and has these black stripes, and then the adult has this beautiful black and crimson coloration, which wards off other animals from eating it. It says, "I am poisonous, don't eat me." And so again, the plant is trying to defend itself from the moths and the butterflies, but they adapt to this and overcome to this and use the weapon that the plant has developed for its own self-defense, which is amazing. Cinnabar moths are very common in Northern Ireland. If you live anywhere on the coasts in June or July, keep an eye out for a little pink thing flying past your face, because it could well be a cinnabar moth. Coming up now, though, there's something that you're looking about for in the springtime. One of our first butterflies to emerge is the orange tip butterfly. And they are mainly white butterflies, but the males have these beautiful orange tips on their upper side, and on the underside, both the males and the females. You can see a female here on the left-hand side. She's not got her orange tips. And on the underside of their wings, they've got this beautiful sort of mapping of green and white, and it's really, really delicate, and they're really beautiful little butterfly. But something that I would encourage you all to look for first thing in the springtime, we're coming about late March, early April, is there's a plant called lady's smock. And it's a beautiful little tiny wee pink flower. I'm trying to remember what its other name is. It's cuckoo flower. Cuckoo flower is the other name of this plant. It goes by a number of different names. And orange tip butterflies feed almost exclusively on the cuckoo flower or the lady smock. And when I say feed, I mean the caterpillars eat exclusively the leaves of this plant. And at this time of year, whenever you see your first orange tip, start looking closely at these flowers. You can see this image here in the center. There is a little tiny orange dot just underneath that unopened flower. And that, in fact, is the orange tip butterfly egg. And every single plant will have only one orange tip egg because the caterpillars are actually carnivorous early on. They'll eat other eggs and other caterpillars whenever they're small. So each female will lay one individual egg on each individual plant, and you can find them really, really easily. We recommend getting a small hand lens or a magnifying glass. And if you see any lady smock or if you see any cuckoo flower, keep an eye out at the tip, just at the base of the flower budding there, because you can see these eggs yourself. These are a very, very common species found in tends to be near wet places, rivers and streams and wet woodlands, but you can find them all over the country. Another butterfly that's will be starting to come out soon enough will be the speckled wood butterfly. Now, speckled wood butterfly, you tend to see them in woodland clearings and little woodland glades on the edge of woodlands, and also along hedgerows as well. But despite the name and despite the place that they live, the caterpillars actually eat grasses. They eat lots of coarse grasses. You can see an image of a flowering grass down there at the bottom. But then whenever the butterflies emerge, they have a really interesting behavior. They leave these grassy areas and they go onto the trees or the hedgerows. The females tend to stay higher up in the canopy, whereas the males will patrol a territory and they will fight with any other males that become too close. So if you have a regular walking route in the mid-spring or late spring, look out for these speckled woods because you'll often see them in the same place every single day because the males will hold that territory and wait for the females to come into them. Another really interesting thing about speckled woods is they do nectar on flowers. They like a lot of different types of flowers, but the adults themselves also really enjoy drinking honeydew, which is what aphids will excrete after they've drunk the sap from trees and leaves. So that's one of the reasons you find them in these woodland glades, because there's lots of heat and lots of sunlight and the aphids are loving it. And so the speckled woods would love the aphids honeydew as well, which is absolutely amazing. Another couple of butterflies here. So these are three butterflies which are all in the same family. These are known as Vanessids. And on the right-hand side, we have the red admiral. And you are called red admirals because of the stripes on their wings after the Navy admirals. And then on the left-hand side, we have the peacock butterfly, and then we have the small tortoiseshell butterfly. This actually small tortoiseshell butterfly is unfortunately trying to get lucky with this peacock here, but obviously that's not going to work for him, and the peacock flew away. Peacocks have got these brilliant blue little spots on their wings, and the idea is that if a bird comes near the peacock, they will spread their wings out quickly, and it looks like two giant eyes looking at the bird, and the bird will hesitate for a split second, startled by these big eyes, and then will fly off. The butterfly will fly off and escape in that split second that the bird is taken to be startled. So it's a brilliant defense for these wee butterflies to escape. Something that all three of these butterflies have in common is that their caterpillars eat nettles. So again, another plant which has evolved this defense to avoid being eaten, but these butterflies have taken this opportunity and they lay their eggs on nettles, and the caterpillars hatch out in their hundreds, in their droves, and you often see them spinning webs to live in, and they'll devour whole nettle plants. And eventually the biggest ones will go off and pupate and become butterflies. Another trait that these three species all share is that most butterflies, they will survive the winter when there's no flowers and there's no heat by in their chrysalis, shall we say, or the eggs will overwinter, whereas these butterflies, they actually hibernate over the winter as adults. So often you'll find them in your garage or in your garden sheds during the winter time, and that's because naturally they would be overwintering in tree hollows and in caves. And then whenever there's the first heat of spring, they'll be starting to warm up and they'll wake up and fly out and hopefully find their own nettle patch to lay their eggs on again. Another member of this family, which is actually a new sight to see in Northern Ireland, is the comma butterfly, which is fantastic to see a new species of butterfly in Northern Ireland. Well, I think it's fantastic anyway. And really extraordinary butterfly with all these scratched edges. On the underside, it's nearly black. It looks like a dead leaf, except for a little white comma, which gives the butterfly its name. It's starting to spread north now. It recently started colonized down in the Republic about 10, 15 years ago, and it slowly started to move its way north. It's been spotted in County Down a handful of times over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe every year for the last 5 or 6 years, not in big numbers, but it's suspected that it could well be breeding in Northern Ireland now. So it's something to look out for. And if you do see a comma butterfly, make sure that you report it to submit your sighting of it. And you can go to the Ulster Wildlife website where you can submit your sightings of all sorts of different species of wildlife. But you can submit your butterflies, including the common butterfly, if you see it. So keep an eye out for this special rarity, which is starting to be seen now more commonly in Northern Ireland. Here's a group of butterflies that you may have seen. These are the white butterflies. Now, a lot of people call them the cabbage whites whenever they see a white butterfly, but actually there's 3 different distinct species of white which are known as cabbage whites. So we have 2 here. On the left-hand side, we have the large white, which is the biggest of the 3 species. And then on the right there, we have the green-veined white. I absolutely love green-veined whites because they've got this beautiful emerald dusting all over them, and they've got these really delicate veins. I just think they're absolutely lovely. All of these species can be seen throughout the summer, and green-veined whites will be out in the springtime as well. And all of them do eat cabbages. Now, when I say cabbages, I don't mean just the traditional crop, the traditional vegetable. They actually eat a family of plants called brassica. And so here's one up here at the top. And if I was a better botanist, I would be able to name that. But I can't, unfortunately. Although it looks a bit like sea radish. If I'm going off the sea there in the background, it could well be sea radish. But there's a number of different plants in this family, or sea mustard, maybe something like that. So there's lots of mustards and things like this. They're all in this same family of plants, and these white butterflies will eat a very big majority of all these different species. But they do become a little bit of a pest in the garden sometimes, because they'll be eating cabbages or eating other plants of the same family that you're trying to grow. It also like nasturtiums as well. So a wee recommendation is to plant some nasturtiums around your crops, and you can always just manually lift caterpillars off and put them on the nasturtiums, and then that should help protect your cabbages a little bit, because then the nasturtiums will be a bit of a sacrifice, and they grow really, really fast. They come back really readily. So not many people like to see them in their gardens, but I love to see these species in my garden. It's great to have white butterflies around. Then we have this little beauty. Oh my word, that is a brilliant photograph. This is a tiny little butterfly called a green hair streak. I was taken by our very own Ronald Stearns. No wonder it's beautiful. So green hair streak is one of my favorite butterflies, actually, and it's tiny. It's not very big at all. It's about the size of a 50 pence piece, if I put my finger and thumb together. It's about the size of a 50 pence piece. There we go, got it out. And there's a real mystery to green hair streak butterfly because it feeds on a variety of different species of plants. There's a picture here of gorse, and they also eat brambles, they also eat vetches, they also eat bird's foot trefoil, and they also eat a plant called bilberry. Curiously, though, in Northern Ireland, they don't appear to eat many of those plants that I've just specified. The caterpillars generally eat bilberry, and they are found predominantly on bogland sites and peatland sites. A really good place to see them is Munchies Moss or in Peatlands Park or our very own nature reserve Balnahone Bog. These places have lots of bilberry, and green hair streak butterflies do very, very well. But in other places, in other parts of the world, if you move further south and in the south of England, you'll find them in lots and lots of different habitats, feeding upon all these different plants. But why are they only feeding on bilberry in Northern Ireland? I don't think there's any real solid proof to indicate what that could be. There's no theories in what that could be. It's rather extraordinary. You have to go to these specialist habitats to see this beautiful little butterfly. It has a cousin, the purple hair streak. You may look at this and go, that's not actually that great a photograph, but I must say this is a brilliant photograph of purple hair streak. Whenever it opens its wings up, it's got this beautiful purple sheen. Purple hair streak, the caterpillars feed exclusively on oak trees, and the adults themselves spend most of their life in the canopy of oak trees. So if the adults are up there, a good 100 feet up in the air on the tallest of those mature oak trees, laying their eggs on the oak trees up there, then they're very, very, very rarely seen. One of the best places to see them is at Crom in Fermanagh. And the best way to see them is make sure you bring a pair of binoculars. And around June, I think it's June, late June, is their peak flight period. And you look at the tip tops of the oak trees through your binoculars and you'll see little flashes of purple. I say you will see, I have looked for them a number of times and have not, but I know that Rosemary has seen them a number of times at Crom. Very beautiful little butterfly and not very well seen in Northern Ireland. They could well be in more places than what I've just said, but there's no sites where people are tripping over a purple hair streak butterflies because they are so hard to see. So if you're out in June and you're walking in an oak woodland, have a look up and look for little flashes of purple in the canopy. Move on to a couple of other species that you could well see. These are the blues. So we have 3 different species of blue in Northern Ireland. We have on the top left there, we have the common blue, which is very helpfully feeding upon its caterpillar food plant, which is bird's foot trefoil, which has got this lovely little yellow flower, and then they've got tiny little leaves. And this is a plant you tend to find in grasslands, in meadows. You often see it on the coasts where there's short grass and the bird's foot trefoil can do really well. And whenever there's bird's foot trefoil, there's normally common blue around nearby as well. On the top right there, we have another butterfly called the holly blue. Now, holly blue used to be really rare in Northern Ireland. In fact, I believe it's on our priority list of butterfly species. But in the last 10 years, holly blue has made a huge, huge distribution movement north. They used to be found sort of in South County Down, but now can be found all across Northern Ireland with records as far north as Ballycastle. And as the name would indicate, the caterpillars feed upon holly. In fact, they tend to like the holly flowers, which you can see here that the adult butterfly is nectaring on in this photograph. They are slightly different from the common blue. Both of them, when they open their wings up, look very, very similar, very bright blue color. But whenever they have their wings whenever they have their wings out, on the upper side is bright blue, but on the underside, the holly blue has got this lovely little kind of cobalt dashing on it, whereas the common blue is much more brown, has these little orange spots on the edge of its wing, and it's to help it blend in with the grass, whereas the light blue, I don't know what its purpose is, but it's an absolutely gorgeous little butterfly. And then lastly, down here at the bottom, I know there's just a tiny hint of blue on this, but trust me, it is a blue butterfly. This is our smallest butterfly. This is small blue, and in fact could be our rarest butterfly. It was thought to have gone extinct in Northern Ireland, but it is being refined in the last number of years. It is now only found in one place in County Fermanagh, which is private and kept very secret so that the butterfly can remain undisturbed. And it feeds on kidney vetch, that plant I showed you all the way back at the beginning. So an example there of the butterfly still feeding on the vetches. And we'll move on to some of our browner butterflies. So here we have, now I'm going to have to test myself here, I'm going to have to get this right. So we have top left, we have small heath butterfly. This is a very, well, it used to be a very common butterfly. You tend to see it in big numbers in lots of sort of wet grassland areas. I know that Divis Mountain is a great place to see this butterfly in the summertime. Unfortunately, I think it's a butterfly that suffered maybe one of the greatest declines in the UK and Ireland. I think it's suffered something like an 80% decline in the last 50 years. It's not rare by any sense, especially when you find it. You tend to find hundreds. You don't tend to find one or two of them. Very small butterfly, just a bit bigger than the green hair streak, but very delicate and quite lovely in its own way. I think the picture to the right of it is large heath, which is much bigger, and that is a bogland specialist that feeds on Crossleys Heath and loves the boglands and won't be found anywhere else. And then bottom left is the ringlet butterfly. I must say that's not the sharpest picture of a ringlet. By that I mean that they are actually one of my favorite butterflies. And they're called ringlets because they've got these beautiful little golden rings around these little black spots. And they've got this beautiful, whenever they're fresh, whenever they've just emerged from their chrysalis, they've got this beautiful little white edging to their wings. And although they're brown all over, they are to me, they're actually a really smart butterfly. And then on the right there, we have meadow brown, which is rather robust. It's nearly as big as a small tortoise shell. It's got those orange blotches on the upper side, but is overall really brown. And although these butterflies may not look overly enticing, seeing lots of them is actually really good. It's a really good indicator that our grasslands are really healthy and they're in a good place. If you're not seeing a lot of these butterflies, then your grasslands aren't in a good condition. You want to be seeing lots of meadow browns, lots of ringlets, lots of small heath, and large heath obviously being a bogland specialist isn't found in grasslands, but they are butterflies that I love to see, and I love to see them in big numbers. Now we move on to two of our extra special butterflies. We have on the left here the cryptic woodwhite, and then on the right we have the marsh fritillary. So cryptic woodwhite is a specialty in Northern Ireland, and the reason for that is that it's not actually found in Britain. A lot of research was done on butterflies back in the early days whenever Victorians were getting interested. And so this species was actually overlooked. And until recently, it was thought to be the same species as a species of woodwhite found in the Pyrenees called the Rial's woodwhite. But actually, some scientists in Ireland and other places in Europe started looking at these woodwhites a little closer, and they found that they were their own species. So cryptic woodwhite is its own species. I think it was officially declared a new species in something like 2001, or maybe even a wee bit later than that, maybe 2010. I remember a one in that number. So they are very special, and they actually do this beautiful, delicate little courtship dance, which this picture sort of illustrates. They will sit on a blade of grass or on a leaf, and they will knock their little antennae against each other in this lovely little dance before they mate, which is lovely. These are feeding on vetches, believe it or not. What's it called? Meadow vetchling is their main food plant, although it's still not quite certain what they entirely eat, the caterpillars. But they love little grasslands on the edge of nice hedgerows and lots of scrub and things. They're a wee bit fussy. They're also very delicate. If you ever get to see them flying around, they look like they'll be blown away if there's a gust of wind. They're delicate little fairies almost when they fly. A really good place to see them in good numbers is the Craigavon Lakes. But you can find them nearly everywhere across Northern Ireland in the right spots, in the right habitats. And then on the right, we have one of our most important species, the marsh fritillary. So marsh fritillary is important in Northern Ireland because we have a lot of them in comparison with lots of other places. In fact, marsh fritillary is a European protected species because it suffered huge declines across all of Europe. And Ireland and Britain are actually one of the strongholds for them left now. Scotland has many, many sites for cryptic wood for marsh fritillary, but Northern Ireland has lots as well, especially west. They love sort of wet grasslands, and their caterpillars feed exclusively on devil's bit scabious. And what they will do is they will form a big mass and they will make a big, big web, and they will sunbathe in the early springtime because they need that heat to give them the energy to keep going and eat more devil's bit scabious. So a lot of places are protected now for their marsh fritillary butterflies, and they are a protected species. In fact, they're so protected, I can't encourage you to get out and see them flying because you don't want to disturb their habitats too much. But there's a number of different places that you can see them. I think Murlock is a nice place to go in the summertime to try and see them. And of course, the small blue, which I've already discussed. There's only one place left. It was thought to go extinct, but it's still hanging on, which is great to see. So how can we help? Well, first of all, as I sort of discussed there's a couple of different things that you need in order to make butterflies happy. The one that we all sort of, we all gravitate towards is this sort of image right here. Yeah, butterfly is nectaring on these flowers. And so we tend to plant lots of flowers for nectaring butterflies, which is great. And it's really important to sustain our butterflies through the summer. But something that cannot be overlooked is the other life stages in the butterfly's life cycle. All of them need to be catered to look after our butterflies. The key one there is a suitable plant to lay their eggs on. Native plants and trees are best. So a lot of our species have evolved with all these different plants, and they need them in order to survive. A great example is the red admirals, small tortoiseshells, and peacock butterflies. I'm sure many of you have seen these species, especially nectaring in the summertime, but they need those nettles or they won't survive. The caterpillars need those nettles in order to feed up and become those beautiful butterflies. So keeping a little nettle patch in your garden, although it may not look lovely, and it may be a bit awkward sometimes whenever you're doing a little bit of weeding around the area, but nettles are so important for these butterflies. So if you can keep a little patch of nettles that's basking in the sun, then that'll be perfect for our butterflies. And then lastly, an undisturbed place to pupate and also hibernate. So keeping a little spot wild throughout the winter time, which is sort of kept unkempt. Lots of butterflies will they will hibernate. They will, as I said before, they'll use tree hollows and things like that. If you have an upside down flower pot, that's really good place for them to get into. There's a wee hole at the top normally for drainage. The butterflies can go inside and they can stay in there all winter. But also the chrysalises as well. Whenever the caterpillars are pupating, they need somewhere safe and secure. So in a hedge or in tall stems and grasses and places like that, that's where they tend to be pupating. So having these different habitats, these different resources is really important for our butterflies. Sorry, I've jumped the gun there on the slides, but just illustrating that. What is that? Is that a comma caterpillar or is that a painted lady caterpillar? I'm not sure. But these species all enjoy well, painted lady doesn't, but all these species here listed enjoy nettles. So having nettles in a sunny spot is really good for these butterflies. Remember, you can't have the butterflies without the caterpillars. For cabbage families, crucifers, lots of other different things. Lady smock, garlic mustard, and hedge mustard. Yes, I forgot about that. You can find the wee orange eggs on them as well. And I was speaking about nasturtiums earlier on. This here is the chrysalis of a I'm not going to pretend I know what species that is, but that is a species of butterfly. And you can see there it's on a wee woody stem. So this presumably was in a little meadow, and this flower has come up and it's died back, but it's a perfect wee point for the butterfly or for the caterpillar to pupate and make this chrysalis, and eventually it will form the butterfly. But if that area, that habitat is destroyed too early, then obviously we end the life cycle of the butterfly there and then. For our browns, we need wild grasses. A lot of us like really neat and kempt lawns. I absolutely loathe it myself. I have a little meadow which I manage as a meadow, and I keep a side of that meadow in long grass. So it's not just all wee herbs and flowers. The grasses can get long and thick, and that's great for our brown butterflies that we were speaking about before. So keep an eye out for them in your garden, and leave a wee grassy patch for them during the summer that that the caterpillars can feed on. Excuse me. As I was talking, just like their ancient ancestors, trefoils and clovers are really good. A lot of people don't like clover in their lawns. Keep the clover. The clover is way better than the perennial ryegrass. It has that beautiful flower, which is great for bees and also butterflies. But the leaves are really important for lots of different species of butterfly. The most common ones will be common blue. There's a few other ones listed there that you may well see in your garden as well, feeding on these different types of legumes: bird's foot trefoil, meadow vetch, kidney vetch, and white and red clover. Here's a few other bits and pieces here. So some of these we've already covered. I didn't cover the big fritillaries. Oh my goodness, I didn't cover fritillaries. So fritillaries are our biggest butterflies. They're only maybe 3 inches in wingspan, but that's quite big for a butterfly in Northern Ireland. But they feed exclusively on violets, dog violets, and other types of violets, which are a really, really small plant. But the caterpillars will feed up on the violets. And in fact, the caterpillars need to get so big that often the caterpillars will go into the bark of a tree and they will hibernate over the winter time and come back out and feed for another spring, summer season before they pupate. So sometimes the caterpillars can live for 2 years in order to feed up on enough dog violets before they make their transformation into the beautiful fritillaries. Marsh fritillary needs the devil's bit scabious. Holly blue eats holly and ivy. In fact, holly blues which come out in the springtime eat holly, and then the ones which emerge for their second generation in September or late August, September, they will eat the flowers of ivy because the flowers of holly have all finished by that stage. Another wee butterfly we've not touched on is the small copper, another very small butterfly, the same sort of size as those blues. They eat sorrels. So again, another plant that you don't really often want to keep, but the caterpillars need to eat the sorrels in order to transform into that beautiful butterfly. And I've spoke about the hair streaks already. If you do want to plant flowers that are good for butterflies, here is a suggestion of different species that you can plant for them. And it's really good to plant different flowers that can come out at different times of the year so that butterflies have access to this food source all the way through the different months. So in the springtime, primroses are starting to come out now. If you can get hold of native bluebells, that's amazing. Forget-me-nots, cuckoo flower, bugle, these are all really, really good. And in the summertime, there's a different sort of assortment of flowers and plants that you can have. On there, I'm just going to pick out brambles. Actually, I know brambles are an absolute pain, but the flowers themselves are brilliant for butterflies and lots of other insects. But actually, there's lots of butterflies and moths which love to eat the leaves of brambles. So as long as they don't get out of control, having a little bit of brambles isn't too bad in your garden. Also, we'll pick out there knapweed. I absolutely adore knapweed. I have some in my meadow in my garden. It's this beautiful purple flower, and it lasts for a long, long time. And the butterflies will drink from it. They will pollinate the plant, and then whenever it goes to seed, it's perfect for goldfinches. And so it's a really good way to see goldfinches up close in your garden, is to have knapweed in your garden. And then in the autumn time, a lot of those plants that are flowering in the summer, they've gone over. Buddleia tends to last there a long time. A lot of people like to plant Buddleia, as it's known as the butterfly bush, but it is not a native species. It's important that if you do have Buddleia, that you keep it in check. A really good way to do this is once the flowers have gone over and they're no longer useful to butterflies, is to cut them off, which isn't too much of trouble, and also to put them in the bin so the seeds don't spread, because they can cause a bit of a nuisance in places where they spread to. Buddleia also is very, very resilient, so hack it back every year so it doesn't get too big and too wild and too out of control. So you can bring it down to stump almost every single year. A little bit of flowering ivy. A little bit of ivy is great. Again, there's lots of different moths that actually like to eat on ivy. Talked about holly blue already, but the flowers, they go late into the autumn, and then the fruits are actually really good for birds as well afterwards. So ivy is a really, really important native nectar source for a lot of our insects going into that to the autumn time of year. There's a link there. Sorry, it's been there the whole time, not talked about it. There's a link there to the Butterfly Conservation website, and they have a lovely wee PDF with all of these different flowers and plants that we've been talking about here that you can look up later and see what's suitable for your garden. And that's it. That is all for me for this evening.